Yeah, tell me about the European Intelligence School.
Okay, yeah. Well, in the latter part of 1951, the organization that I happened to be with, the 353rd Communications Reconnaissance Company, was sent to Germany. When we got there, we went to Gießen, Germany, which is about 30 miles from Frankfurt. And life became absolutely beautiful. Our quarters were built by Hitler for his Luftwaffe. Beautiful buildings, marble halls, marble latrines, corporals and above. We had two-man rooms. Germans pulled all of the KP and all the other duties. Even our work, all we had to do to go to our operations when our shift came up, we went upstairs because our operation area was upstairs of our barracks. It was a really lovely place to be. So Germany was terrific. Well, the whole time in Germany was. But I'd only been at Oberammergau for about 3 months when Frankfurt headquarters sent down an order to Gießen saying, send three people down to Oberammergau to attend the Russian language course at the European Command Intelligence School. Well, they looked in the records for the people in our company, and they picked out the three of us that had the highest test scores. And they called us in, and they said, we want to send you to Oberammergau to study Russian. And we said, well, we didn't really know anything about Oberammergau. Well, they told us Oberammergau is an extraordinarily interesting place. It's down in southern Bavaria. About 500 years ago, the people of Oberammergau promised God that if the plague missed Oberammergau, that every 10 years they would do a passion play. And they have done that every 10 years since. Mm-hmm. Really unique village. All the people there are some of the finest wood carvers in Europe, and the school was there. Okay, so the three of us were sent down to the school. Well, it turns out at the school, when they started a new class, they would start about 50 people, but never did more than 25 graduate. Half of every class would flunk out. Now the class was divided into two halves. In the morning, you would have your language course, and that would be from a Russian. These Russians had come into Germany when Germany had invaded Russia. They had then moved back into Germany because they were anti-communist. All of them were, and they all taught at the school. Okay, and then in the afternoon you would have your background subjects, and these would be taught by Americans. They'd bring them over from the universities, or they'd be military men, whatever. And in the afternoon we study things like the history of the Soviet Air Force, interrogation techniques, general history of Russia itself, and things like that. All sorts of courses in the afternoon. But the morning classes with the Russian teacher, each teacher would be assigned either 4 or 5 students, and that would he or she would be your teacher. Well, we drew Mrs. Onderetz. Mrs. Onderetz was a unique individual. Now, Mrs. Onderetz would be in her 60s somewhere, and at that time, I thought she was an old lady. But now that I'm 78, I guess I would call her a chick. But anyway, Mrs. Onderetz was unique. And in the school, every Saturday, you took a written test, and once a month, you would take an oral test, and the head of the school, Mr. Zorgenfrei, would give the oral test once a month. Mrs. Onderetz worried about her boys all the time. You know, as Friday came along, she'd be all worried about us all having to go in and take our test on Saturday, she'd be all nervous and upset. And if we did well, then on Monday she would be all happy again. Well, if you flunked two tests in that school, you were gone.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
why half of them didn't make it. Huh?
Yeah, half of them didn't make it. And we had one guy in our class, Corporal Pond. Now, Corporal Pond was continually flunking. But Mrs. Andres, this excitable woman, Pond would flunk his test, and Mrs. Andres would go into Mr. Zorgenfrei. Oh, you must let Pond stay. He will do better. And she was such a pest that finally Zorgenfrei would say, all right, Pond can stay another week. Well, one day, a bug flew in our window, and Pond killed it. Mrs. Andres said, everything has a right to live. That week, Pond flunked his test, and Mrs. Andres did not go in and talk to him. Pond was gone.
Oh, so she didn't stick up for him this time.
No,
now,
no,
right?
not after he killed the bug. That was it. That was it. Now, all of the teachers they all lived in this hotel downtown in Oberammergau. And honestly, if any of you ever get a chance to go to Europe, Oberammergau is a place you want to go. It's so beautiful. And they all lived in this hotel. Now, Mrs. Andres, every Thursday night, her students had to go to her tea party. Now, when you went to the when you went to her tea party, it was Tolka Peruski. You can only speak Russian. Okay, so you go to the tea party, and you go down there, and she'd have her samovar going with the tea, and she'd have all these Russian hors d'oeuvres made, and everybody spoke Russian. And one of the teachers was Miss von Buch. Miss von Buch was not only a teacher at the school, but she was also a well-known concert pianist. She used to go all over Europe giving concerts. But she was a very haughty lady. At some point in the evening, she would sit down at the piano, and Mrs. Andres would announce that Miss von Buch was going to play for us. And Miss von Buch would say, what do you want to hear? And one of the guys would maybe say, well, why don't you play a little Chopin? And she'd say, if you want to hear Chopin, turn on the radio. That was too romantic for her. And then she'd play whatever she wanted to play. Well, another one of the teachers at the school was a count. He was a very old man, probably about 80, I suppose.
He was a count?
He was a count. He was a Russian count, yes. Now, he was a very nice man, and he didn't worry about the fact that he was a count or anything, but Mrs. Andres did.
Let's see who it is.
Can
Yeah, we'll
you
pause
hold
it.
just a second?